What we're doing here, the first part of the meeting is a bunch of information about all the sources of the disinformation, and we go through that in hopes that you will pay attention and stay on till the end when Joyce goes through the actions that everybody can take to be active in confronting this disinformation. What we're going to do here first is there is misinformation and there's disinformation. And you'll see on a lot of the news programs, a lot of the mainstream media uses the term misinformation incorrectly. What they really mean is disinformation that is deliberately deceptive. And so we focus on the disinformation side of this equation. What are the issues? These have been the issues. This is what we started with some time ago. But what we realize that these issues are just being used to get a base of parents involved in these right-leaning groups. Because COVID is kind of disappearing slowly, the focus that we're hearing at the school board meetings is not so much the mask mandates and the vaccine mandates and stuff, but it's focusing on critical race theory, parents' rights, and book banning. These are also the focus for the midterm elections and the school board elections. Now the school board elections aren't going to happen until April of 2023, but a lot of the focus is being put on school boards now in the hopes of getting people involved and winning in the midterms. So what's it really about? It's about taking control of the school board, followed by control of the curriculum. And why do they want to control the curriculum? Because they don't want anything taught about slavery, the 1619 Project, and what they're lumping it all into critical race theory, which they have redefined critical race theory. It is far from what the original meaning is. It's about dismantling public schools and funding private schools. And we'll talk about that later in this meeting, about getting the candidates elected to the board so they can run for higher office. Once they get their name recognition out in the community, it's easier to run for higher offices. And a lot of this is trying to be shown as grassroots organizations, but they're really funded. They're getting their information to take to their own school boards from well-funded national organizations. So words to watch for, and I try to highlight these as we go through the presentation in red. So again, patriotism, patriotic education, that is something that is typically done in authoritarian countries. Let's talk a little bit about what a school board does. And this is from the IASB, which is the Illinois Association of School Boards. It's to provide local citizen control over education at a point close to the parent and child as possible. That doesn't mean parents directly influence what's going on in the schools. What it means is parents, as voters, elect school board members who do the work for them, because we are in what's called a representative democracy. We all can't vote on everything that comes up. So we elect people to represent us in the school boards, in the library boards, at our local community municipal elections. But that's the most important thing on this slide. I want to talk about this little school that it's called Hillsdale College in southern Michigan. What's very concerning is they are becoming a focal point of quite literally everything that what we're going to talk about and what we have been talking about. Book banning, anti-vax, critical race theory. They're climate deniers. And of course, they support Republican legislation. Now, this second bullet is just they think that the January 6th insurrection was a hoax. Now, this is a college, a Christian college that's doing this. And they report that Vladimir Putin is a hero to populist conservatives around the world. That is really sad. Now, this is, again, a Christian college that is purporting this stuff. And here again, they are promoting a patriotic education. And I just said patriotic education is typical of authoritarian countries. Now, here's a group, Parents Defending Education, which is funded by the Koch brothers, sham grassroots Parents Defending Education. But the first thing that's here is they are focusing on school privatization. And by do that, they are attacking the school boards, the superintendents, the principals, and the teachers. So how well are they actually living up to their self-promotion? Now they're a national grassroots organization. It's not well. So they really depend on two other organizations, No Left Turn in Education and Moms for Liberty. Now, on the next page, I've got a map that shows where they claim they have organizations across the United States. But here, just for example, we'll look at the map. Alabama has one chapter. There's 7 members. Arkansas has looks like 3 members or two organizations with 3 members. Iowa has 2 members. Now, and Betsy Devos' home state of Michigan has 13 members. So while they claim they are a national organization, they have very few members. So here's the national map that they've got. There's a group in Naperville. I don't have specific count on that, and one down in Mahomet. And if you go to this website, defendinged.org/map, this is interactive. You can click on any one of these red dots, and they will show up as where they're at and the number of members. Why are schools taking center stage? There's an explosive conflict spreading across the red states. Aggressive drive to censor how public school teachers can talk about race, gender, and sexual orientation. This is the most intrusive attempt to set legislative limits on what is taught in the classroom since the laws barring teaching of evolution in the 1920s and the anti-communist loyalty oaths that happened in the 50s. Now, the main sponsors are, as you would expect, Republican governors, Glenn Youngkin, who just got elected in Virginia, Ron DeSantis in Florida, and Greg Abbott in Texas. They are advancing what's known as parents' rights. And now remember, the first line that I had on what the responsibility of a school board is to represent the parents. This doesn't mean parents directly have rights. You have rights through the school board. This is something from an interview with Joe Biden. One way for a group to gain power is to pit one group against another by creating controversies, which is exactly what they're doing. Now, this is a very scary slide. This is an Arizona state senator. Now, the second bullet is what's concerning. In this speech, she said, we need to build more gallows because they want to make an example of these traitors who have betrayed our country. The fact that we have people expressing their thoughts that don't agree with what this woman supports, that doesn't make them a traitor. That means they want things, they are expressing progressive ideas. Now, let's talk about book banning. This is a slide from Missouri School. They voted, the school board voted 4-3 to remove this book, even though the review committee had voted 8-1 in support of it. And all it was it's called, the book is called The Bluest Eye. It's about a young Black girl coming to terms with her beauty. And the commentator has, I'm still waiting for the boards to ban Shakespeare, where there's writings featuring murder, death, suicide, and sometimes rape. So the bottom line is here, school board elections matter. And again, that's why we're doing this. We have to be involved, not just in the school board elections, but also in these midterm elections. Joyce is going to have a number of things at the end of this, at the end of my presentation for you to consider joining. Talking about book banning, they're backed by wealthy Republican donors, purporting to be grassroots, which we've talked about. Some of these groups present themselves as local, but many of the groups are involved in banning are backed by influential conservative donors. some of the, some of the like Koch brothers that we already talked about. This has become the whipping boy of the book banners, basically. The graphic novel called Maus, M-A-U-S, a German word for mouse, is they claim it shows drawings of naked pictures, and there's swearing in it. So we'll take a look at what the best that we could find that's in this book. A Tennessee school board barred the graphic novel in a unanimous vote. And they're claiming that the ban was not related to the book's depiction of Holocaust. What they're saying is because the swearing and the naked pictures. This is the author, the Spiegelman, said he's trying to be tolerant, but the problem is bigger and stupider. He's trying to wrap his brain around why they're doing this. Now, this is more on this Tennessee group that has voted to ban this book, and that they're also voting to ban books that promote. Now, promote. I don't think these books really promote anything. They may talk about it. That doesn't mean they're promoting it. They want to ban books that make someone feel discomfort based on race or sex. But again, here now, the two bullets on this page is here's a governor of Tennessee wanting to do a partnership with a Christian college to open 50 charter schools designed to teach children to be informed patriots. Now, if you remember, we have a separation of church and state. So for the governor to say he wants to partner with Christian college, that actually conflicts with the Constitution. And then he says he's proposing an agenda to go even further, to put up $6 million to create a specific group at the University of Tennessee that is a center for anti-American thought, or that to counter the so-called anti-American thought that they claim the liberals or progressives are promoting. Now, here's the book Maus. Graphic story of the Holocaust, as a father talking to his son, and it's the son, Art Spiegelman, who wrote this book. Now, and this is on the last page. This is all we could find is this swearing, God damn you. That's the only thing that we could find in the book. Now, he complained about nudity. Well, here's a mouse that has no clothes on. Now, see, all the other mice in the pictures have clothes on, but this is not really nudity. It's a mouse. Here's another picture of a mouse with no clothes on. Is this really nudity? So you got to look into what these people are saying and see where they're coming from. This is about book banning. The interesting thing is, CBS News did a poll, and it says that the majority of Americans don't want books banned for any number of reasons. And here they are: 83% don't ban these books for criticizing U.S. history or telling the truth. So you can go through this, but the bottom line here is 58% believe racism is still a serious problem in America today. That's why this critical race theory, they're trying to make that the front and center issue for these elections coming up. But like I said, they have redefined critical race theory to mean what they wanted to. In previous sessions, we've talked about Christopher Rufo, who from the Manhattan Institute, who redefined critical race theory and is promoting what he wants it to mean, which is not what it really means. Okay, now our libraries next. This is from an Illinois organization called Illinois Families for Public Schools. What's happening is libraries, and not just libraries, but organizations across the board, school boards as well, are being burdened with FOIA requests. That's Freedom of Information Act requests. This guy, Brian Timpone, he owns hundreds of media sites that practice something called pink slime journalism. He has bots that actually produce the stories and put the manufactured stories out on these hundreds of media sites. Again, when you have a so-called a good lie, and if you tell it lots of times and often, people will start to believe it. Now, he partners with a conservative talk show host, Dan Proft, who is he lives down in Florida, but he has these radio shows um, that promote these FOIA requests. Illinois Families for Public Schools see these well-defined, well-financed attacks to create chaos and erode support for public schools. Again, we have to be aware of this stuff. We have to speak up at our school boards in support of what the educators and the school board is supporting. This is here just for what's at the top here. People are getting elected to library boards with the intent to destroy them. We had a slide on this a couple of meetings ago about what happened at the Niles Library when only 8.4% of the voters voted in the election, and these people got elected into the library board. Reduced hours, reduced support staff, reduced programs, etc. So what's happening with book burning? Well, it's an old saw here. It actually started in the 30s with the German student union. They had to convince the students that they had to be the caretaker of these books. So they were banning books and burning them. Anything that was opposed to the Nazi ideology was something that was a candidate for being banned. And anything that was written by a Jewish communist, a socialist, an anarchist, a liberal, a pacifist, sexologist, you name it. And they finally even started to ban books by Karl Marx, Albert Einstein, and Helen Keller. So I'm not going to go through this, but there is a Library Association Bill of Rights, but there's a lot of information that's on that page. Oh, with book bans on the rise, moms who oppose them are pushing back. Now, remember that slide that I just talked about, that the majority of Americans do not support book banning. So when you see this happening, and this is another reason why you have to attend your school board meetings, if you see it happening, you have to be able to speak up. So this is an example of moms speaking up against the book banning that's happening in their area. This happened in Tennessee. They're protesting that Tennessee school board that voted to ban mouse. And what this is saying, they're seeing a huge increase in parents who are non-educators. They have been trained in education, speaking up, wanting to be more important or have more influence over what the educators actually feel should be taught. When we're talking about school privatization, I'm going to guess that most of you have never heard of this what happens the last week of January every year. It's called National School Choice Week. School choice opponents say that school choice is aimed at privatizing the education system. The trouble is the private schools are not well regulated like the public education. A big proponent of this was Betsy Devos, who was our Secretary of Education for years. She's been advocating for alternatives to public schools. Now, before she became Education Secretary, she claimed that public schools were a dead end. Now, why we didn't know that before while she was as Secretary of Education, so we could have actually protested this, I don't know. But now you know this, and she is still working to defeat this. She stated that her mission as a top educator is to expand school choice. What that means, and this tends to be a zero-sum game. Expanding private schools means a reduction in public schools. The School Choice Week is actually driven by last week in January, bankrolled by right-wing special interest groups. A new wave of parent groups are deployed to make it appear that there's wide opposition to public school policies. Now, I remember again that map that I showed and showed you how many people were actually involved. This is a minority that's loud and vocal at the school board meetings. So we have to go to make our voices heard. There's a group for Moms for Liberty, Parents Defending Education, Independent Women's Forum. We've already talked about a couple of these. These parents groups appear to have joined decades-long coordinated dark money effort to dismantle public education. We can't let that happen. One reason that the United States has been so successful over the years is we had free and widely available public education, free public education. Now here, this is a group that is located in Arlington Heights, Illinois. They are having an event coming up. It's called the Tavern Debate. I didn't put the date on here because I didn't want to advertise it. But they are going to be discussing abolish public schools. This is a group, the Heartland Institute, right here in Arlington Heights, that is trying to abolish public schools. What they want is conservative takeover of school boards that have altered lessons on race and social injustice. Now districts are finding their broader efforts on diversity, equity, inclusion also being challenged. People were conflating the definition of equity with critical race theory. Again, their definition of critical race theory is what they are defining it to be. Equity is something that we need to continue to pursue. What happened in Virginia, they had a program that they were implementing across the state on diversity, equity, and inclusion until Glenn Youngkin got elected. On his first day in office, he issued an executive order to get rid of all this work. Virginia Department of Education reversed what they were doing across the state. Now, teachers are under fire in a number of different ways, and it's over this panic of critical race theory. Again, it's a manufactured panic because they have created their own definition. Now, this is something that just came out in just a few days ago in March 10th, so 9 days ago. While they know they can't police every teacher, they want to put cameras in classrooms. What they can do is make teachers and school administrators live in fear because they're putting things in place that allow teachers to be reported if somebody in the classroom comes home and says, well, they were talking about race. Oh my gosh, they're talking about critical race theory. They're talking about slavery. Oh my gosh, they were talking about critical race theory. Well, that's not what happens. So the book bannings, suspension, firing of teachers we're seeing largely driven by the efforts of conservatives. In Idaho, there's a House Bill 666, which if you know what some of these numbers mean, you can look at what 666 up, just Google it. Similar bills have been passed, and I have an update on the Indiana bill, which is actually good news. This is a small town in Illinois. They're suddenly worried they would not be paid because a parent who objected to the district's COVID mask mandate filed a claim against the insurance company. For what? We didn't get the details on that. But you have district officials who are spending more time on issues like this. This is called paper terrorism. They file these suits, and the school district has to deal with it because they don't know if it's a sham or otherwise. So they have to somehow deal with it. Claims are baseless. She had no ability to use the mask mandate to file a claim against the insurance policy. But the school district had to deal with it. And what they are calling themselves is sovereign citizens. This is a term that happened started a couple of years ago. Remember some of the stuff that was going on in Wyoming with some of the ranchers out there who wanted to use federal lands because they said they're a sovereign citizen. What that means is you can't tell me what to do. And a sovereign state is a country. Countries can decide what they want to do, but we don't have sovereign citizens. What they want is parental rights. Again, go back to one of the first slides that I had. Parental rights doesn't mean that parents can tell the school what to do. You do that through your school board. School choice is rooted in efforts to keep the schools racially segregated. This is why the so-called critical race theory has become the marching orders basically for all these groups. And again, they are talking about at school boards. Here's the big donors, the Koch brothers, Betsy and Dick DeVos. Imagine that, because they want private schools. Why do they want private schools? Because they have investments in private schools, and they will profit off of these. Okay, parents defending education. We've talked about them. Moms for Liberty. We've talked about them. I decided to Google public school exit, and guess what? There is an organization called Public School Exit, and they have a guide to rescue our children from public schools. Rescue our children from public schools. Let that think in about that. That to me is again another manufactured issue. They're concerned about the schools are indoctrinating American children with everything we hold dear. Church has nothing to do with public schools, and again, Christianity nothing to do with public schools. But they're putting this into the lexicon that these are issues that the public schools are dealing with, and they aren't. Another reason why we have to be active. The road to fascism is paved with timidity. In other words, if you sit back and just let it happen, it will happen. So we have to get out there and speak up. The war on teachers, the books that are being pulled out of curriculum and book burning has less to do with book banning, but more of or what they're scared about with critical race theory. And what this means here, it means to them whatever they want it to mean. And if you remember, again, when we talked about Christopher Rufo, that's exactly what his intent was. He said, we will throw everything toxic into critical race theory. It has more to do with the creeping encroachment, surveillance, turning teachers in, teacher watch list. So you guys could just kind of read these. It has everything to do with the GOP's interest in solely strangling public education. This is their discussion. Freedom is under attack on more fronts than people may realize. And again, freedom is what they want it to be. Freedom is what they want. What they want to be free to do. In other words, they don't want to be free to have to wear masks. They want to be free not to get vaccinated. It doesn't mean freedom as what it's meant for decades and centuries in America. They've made considerable progress by denouncing the teaching of critical race theory. Again, it is not being taught in schools in America. Now, this is what's scary is most high schools do teach the theory of evolution, but leading Republican politicians are concerned that that may cause discomfort with some of the students who are taught based on their religion that it's not evolution. This is something that was filed as a bill in Oklahoma that would allow parents to sue teachers for teaching anything that is in opposition to closely held religious beliefs. Whose religion? Christian religion? Jewish religion? Hindu? Muslim? I mean, this is clearly a Christian white national bill. So what they don't want is to have these concepts promoted, to bar whole concepts in our schools. We already talked about the Virginia governor proposed a bill and now advancing in New Hampshire. This bill is designed to ensure teachers' loyalty. Teachers' loyalty. That's what was happening to the McCarthy era, where people had to sign loyalty oaths that they weren't a communist. This is not something that should be happening in America. There's a group called Red, Wine, and Blue. You can Google them. They are fighting back against this issue in Ohio, the same as Joyce and I are doing on these monthly calls. So what they are saying and what they're telling their members: show up at meetings with fact-based speeches, ready to get your point across. Now, this is what I said when we talked about that. Indiana had a bill. The Senate actually killed it. Educators and parents in Indiana called their senators and asked them to vote against this bill, which they did. So now this is interesting. There's one high school, and this is in Brooklyn, where this high school junior said, yes, she had a short course in critical race theory, but she's asking adults, chill out. It's not what you're being led to believe. Shows that parents have no idea what students are learning. When we discussed critical race theory in our short workshop, where we were taught the basic premise of critical race theory. Were we taught that all white people are nothing but racial bigots? No. Were we taught that all white people should feel guilty about events? No. Were we taught that were students taught to hate their white friends and teachers? Absolutely not. So what she's saying is, if you really get an education about critical race theory, it's not what they are trying to push it out to make you believe. This is something that another win in New Hampshire. There was a big push by the vocal minority at school boards to ban critical race theory, against mask mandates. But what happened is there was a group of progressives that ran for the school board, and across the state, there was a push to advocate for school privatization. Now, the candidates, these progressive candidates, ran on the basis is that they pledged to support and protect public education. So instead of resonating with voters about the school privatization, these progressives actually weaponized it, and they won. Every one of them won a seat on the school board. Can it happen here in Illinois? There are a couple bills in Springfield that you should know about. The good news is they're not going to go anywhere. The first bill creates the Parental Access and Curriculum Transparency Act, which provides that no public school or district when I say it's been re-referred to the Rules Committee, every bill that's proposed starts out in the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee decides what committee it's going to go to. When it gets sent back to the Rules Committee, that means nobody wants to deal with it. Now, it was proposed by a representative from Teutopolis, Illinois, and from Effingham. Another one supported or proposed by a representative from Fox Lake provides that school districts may not include certain concepts. Again, this is throughout the bill. Certain concepts. Makes changes in courses concerning patriotism. Now, I don't know. I know when I went to high school, I did not get a course in patriotism. Here's something from a teacher in North Carolina. So many teachers are afraid that a small but really vocal minority of parents and right-wing people, their voices are so loud and hateful at times, and I think it's really hard to fight against that. But we have to, because there's a whole lot on the line if we don't. People like this, there are teachers here in our school districts that can't put up with this anymore and are ready to quit. Now, we already have a teacher shortage. This is something that at President Biden's inaugural Summit for Democracy in December, said that authoritarianism is the defining challenge of our time. And that's what all this is headed for. So right from the school, you guys have probably seen this before if you've attended. So what they do is they drum up a culture war around race, gender issue, make it an issue, even if it's not. They stoke fears. So what they want to do is make elections about fears, not about truth, about fears. Critical race theory is not being taught. It's not something that we should be afraid of. Okay, and then attempts to update the curriculum as a critical attack on American values, that being white privilege. Okay, and this is from the NEA president in the December issue of NEA magazine. So bottom line, what do we do? Get active. Joyce is going to review a number of things that you can do. So come to our next meeting in April 16th. Tell us what you did. Tell us what you saw. Tell us what you encountered. We want to make this more of an interactive meeting than just a presentation as it's been. But remember, a highly motivated minority will overcome a complacent majority. We have to have our voices heard. So I'm going to turn this over to Joyce now.
Great. Thank you so much, Jim, for all this awesome information. So I've rearranged a little bit of our action items to kind of get people where they're at. So, and also we're going to start doing some very specific action steps at each of these. So the point is, don't despair. I totally agree that conservative groups have a lot of money. But when you're talking about these local elections, I think that we don't necessarily need money. We need turnout. We need to get people understanding what's happening. So the main message is don't despair. We can do something, even if it's not just, about the money. So one thing is to write letters to the editor, and this has some great information to actually do that. Jump to the next one. So here's the action items. So everybody's not starting at the same place. So your school board, maybe you're protecting your school board because they're already moderate progressive. Maybe you are concerned because you have a school board that's actually trying to kill an equity program, trying to, transparency and parent rights, and trying to kill discussions on race and gender identity. So this is about killing discussions on race and teaching about that in schools, and also LGBTQ rights is the other big piece of that they're after. And also they want to also kill sexual education discussion, but that part of it they're using more to just get their point across, because that's always been there. So the three things: prepare, share, be there. So prepare means basically knowing where you're at, knowing where your school board and your community is at. Share is critical in that you're starting to network and make sure that you're getting the word out. And then be there is showing up. And again, the thing that drives me is if our voices are not there, know who's going to be there. It's going to be those loud minority groups that want to kill public education. Make no mistake, they're being very upfront about that now. So prepare. So these are some action items. If you're new to the school board, I always say school board meetings should be the most boring meetings on the planet, and they are not. It's concerning that it's not just about, budgets and basic business. So if you're not sure where your school board is at, first thing, view board meeting videos. They're live streamed, and they're also normally saved after the fact. So check them out. You can fast forward through them if they're videotaped, so you're going to know, look at the public comments also. But honestly, the business pieces are also critical at the end. Know who your school board members are. You can see that in the videos, how they discuss, what they're discussing, how they vote. Check them out on Facebook and forums. Find out your school board curriculum policies, and find out if you have an equity program or a wellness program. Those two programs, and they may be called slightly different things, but those are pretty much what they're being called now. That's where they're going to protect your diversity, equity, and inclusion programs for, again, talking about race and LGBTQ plus rights. And they're also going to include sexual education, and sign up for webinars. There's a lot of great topics that we have in some of these slides, and we will be sharing those slides. I have some links. Make sure that you're signing up and you're in those networks. So that's just being aware of where you're at. Now, once you know where you're at, now you want to start amplifying that message. Right-wing groups are really coordinated and they do a great job of that, but guess what? So do we. These meetings and all these different networks that we're in, these progressive groups, we're getting the word out, but we need to always be better. We need to be stronger. We need to be louder. Recognize who's showing up. And I'm going to show you a little bit after this, a little demo on what we're looking for. So sometimes they may be wearing shirts or some other coordinated ways of showing who they are. Sometimes they have signs, but really talk to the people. When you show up to a meeting, find out who's there. You can usually see our progressive groups, our network, we tend to sit together. We try to wear the same color shirts. Join local progressive groups. And this is going to be a great way to know what's going on. whether that's school board specific or community, because when you need to put the call out, it's not just going to be to very focused groups. So Indivisible, NWSOFA was what we have here in the Northwest suburbs who's sponsoring this event. Your local Democrats, school boards are nonpartisan, but recognize that this has become there are politics involved here, certainly. I don't care if my school board members are Democrats or Republicans. I care the policies that they're pushing. Look for the Facebook pages for these progressive groups. And if you do any kind of rallies or now that there's a lot of campaigning going on, you can find out where these groups are if you go to any events and start talking to people, figure out what groups you need to join. There's been a push to have these go private. So you'll need to know that they exist and you'll probably need to know somebody in order to get in. Again, share, collaborate, network, find professionals and teachers in particular. Have them, find retired teachers who are willing to speak at meetings about the importance of, honest, accurate education. Create groups to attend school board meetings. You don't have to go alone, but if you do, go alone. If you just want to listen the first time and figure out where those groups are sitting. Find the allies. When you show up, you're going to figure out who they are by what they're saying or how they're reacting to comments. Online petitions are just another way to help amplify our voice and draw people in. And then the next step is you have to show up. If you're just, posting in Facebook pages alone, that's not going to be enough. Next slide, please. You have to be there in one way or another. And that may be just sending emails to the board. You do a search, my district D211 Board of Education. You may need to put a state in there or a town to get a hit specifically for your area. Do a search. If you add contact to that, you're going to get the list of contact information. There may be one link you could just press to contact all of them. You have to attend school board meetings, and I know not everybody can do that, so I understand that. But see if you can get other people to attend. But if you're able, please make that effort because it's absolutely critical. Sign up to speak. If you're not comfortable speaking, show support by just clapping or letting those people who are speaking on behalf of the education and open, honest education, make sure you're there to support them because otherwise it can feel very lonely. Sign witness slips as they come out. That Facebook page is a great place to get that information. I'm going to share, we have a brand new Facebook page and we're going to start sharing that kind of information on there. So as Jim said, we're trying to get this more interactive and more networking going. Letters to the editor, absolutely important. Kathy Risberg, who's one of our hosts here, she's done a letter to the editor and it was just great. It was really greatly appreciated. That's a great way to amplify the voice outside of those school board meetings and outside of, our progressive groups. That gets it out to the wider area. A lot of people are not aware what's happening. Okay, run for office. This is really the bottom line of what's so important. If you can't run for office, find other people who are willing to. Ask people. You'd be surprised. People are feeling like, oh, maybe I'm not the right person. If you ask people, they get them thinking about it. It's really important. You're going to find them in your different networks, and you just start asking them. FOIA requests, I'm going to do a demo on this. This is absolutely fascinating. So I want to show you and give you an assignment to look into this. Be a troll. Go into their groups. Some of them are actually even open. Some of them you're going to have to join covertly. Just take some screenshots of what's happening in those groups. That's really important, particularly if you have school board members. Maybe there's conservative school board members who are posting some information in those groups. Let's get some receipts, right? And absolutely have to vote. These elections are not decided by a huge number of people. We don't want them decided by yard signs, or we want them decided by the community. And most people, by and large, there's been a lot of surveys. People support public education. It's absolutely critical to our communities. Here's some slides on messaging. Again, we'll share these slides, but I want to do a bit of a demo. But again, really important when you're doing your messaging, be inclusive. That's what the other side does not want. They don't want inclusivity. They don't want to amplify all voices. And that's really what we want to see. That's the equity piece of this. We're not looking for one group over another. All children benefit from an equity program. They all benefit from an honest, accurate curriculum. say what you're for. Make sure you're repeating those messages. I was at a messaging webinar recently, and they said if you're not sick of hearing your message, you haven't said it enough. So make sure that we are repeating those positive messages about inclusivity and equity. Okay. This is just a slide on some messaging resources. These are some outstanding resources. It's honesty and education, words that win, honest, support our schools. There's some really outstanding information out there, and this is probably something that we'll want to start working on as well in the future. Messaging is always critical. The conservatives tend to have very simple messages, so that's why I think it's easier for them to get that out. So we need to make sure that we're getting our message out as well. So here are some public comment samples. Children deserve an honest education about race and racism in this country. Again, we'll share these slides. Go ahead and just use these. You can use these in a letter to the editor. You can use them in an email to your Board of Education, or you can use them as public comments and then hold them as needed. Run for office. So I'm going to share. So here's some links for running for office. Runforsomething.net is an amazing resource. Red, White, and Blue, also amazing resource. Other ways, really talk to your local progressive groups. They know about running for office. They will support you. They will figure out who you need to talk to and how you need to get your funding started up. And talk to school board members. You can catch them. You can catch them after meetings, or they go to a lot of events, and they're happy to talk to you. Ask them what it's like, what it takes to run, and they'll probably set up a coffee or a phone call with you. Okay, and this will be our next meeting. So a few things I want to share, and I've shared these in the chat. One of them is our, and that's not on here, but our email address is SchoolBoardDisinformation@gmail.com. And you can send us tips or thoughts. So we've just created a new Facebook page. And again, this is really, I know we've had a lot of people call for this, and this is really the goal, is to get people involved and active. If you, and I shared this in the chat as well, if you want to just get more information, more than just once a month, and find ways to connect better, please try and join our Facebook page. It's publicly available. You can find this in a search, but you have to be a member to see what's in it. Book ban busters, and this was also in the chat. I really encourage you. This is, I think, a really easy way to get involved. Is this Red, Wine, and Blue group, and they're not Republican or Democrat. This is a group that's trying to support public education. Go to this link and you can see where the book ban efforts are happening in our area. You just go hover over these. It's pretty crazy what's happening here. But you can zoom in and get a better sense. So you can click on these things and see what's happening in our own cities, in our own towns. These are not necessarily, so you can see they have ban busted. They have, some of these say that they're just requested. So be aware of this. Sign up here, and then what they're going to do is they will, my understanding is they'll send links that I need to get out here. You can report a ban, you can get training, you can donate ban books. So this is a way to get involved in me. Included this link to our resource kit, and these things will also be in our Facebook page. So it'll be a great way to have them available. We have a link here to the different presentations we've been doing, and then Jim has all these amazing links, and there's also these action links, so you can go into there. This is our resource kit as a Google document. It actually gives you a lot of information and some links on just a highlight of what we're trying to, save here, and some tips on how to do it. Run for something. Again, this group is just amazing. If you're thinking about running, ask us, send us an email. But this gives you a bunch of links on how to get started and what to think about. Okay, what I really wanted to show is the Foia requests. In your school board. This is absolutely critical to see what's going on in your districts. And I just, in the interest of time, I actually just pulled up randomly a bunch of school districts to see what's going on. And generally you can just do, if you want to do Naperville, 203 school board members, this will give you the contact. But if you want to do school board meetings, this is going to bring you to those pages, and you're going to figure out how to get to them. So I'm starting with some of these. Once you get to the meeting, so you'll do some searching, it'll bring you to the meetings page. So what's happening in these FOIA requests, and let's go ahead and pull up. And normally some of these have special meetings, these emergency meetings. Go to the regular meetings, the business meetings. And then they're going to have this part where you can view the agenda. This is School Board Docs. This is a very common interface that a lot of groups are using. So what you'll do is you'll go through the agenda, and interestingly enough, and I didn't realize this till fairly recently, FOIA requests are actually Freedom of Information Act requests. They are public information. People have a right, anybody, you don't even have to be in the district, to request information about what's happening in the school boards. Things that are being requested are months and months of every email that an administrator or board is sharing. They are making these requests. They're looking for some blanket requests. Some are anything with a mask, anything with COVID in it, any email or communication with 1619 Project. But there's a strategy, and I don't know if it's even new, but there's this other strategy that they're going after, which is basically to go after to try and force superintendents and board members to resign through this policy. Let me see here. And the other thing you can see in your board member agendas, you'll see information about public comments. You'll see, well, basically this one tells you have 3 or 5 minutes to make your comments, and it'll give you some additional parameters. And you'll see where it fits into the agenda. I do actually encourage you. They actually have all the presentations in most of these school boards, and you can see the other things that are coming up, whether that's, budget or other things you're interested in. This one, I am looking for the FOIA requests. So sometimes these are not as easy to find. So I'm going to look here in the reports. No, this one's not here. And this may not be, and depending on the type of meeting, they may not actually be in here. So let me skip over this one because I don't see any. And it's possible that there are no FOIA requests in that time. So let me just look here. No, okay, I'm not seeing the FOIA request in this one. Okay. So, so this was another school board. I'm not sure which one this was. Okay, so agenda. Okay, this is D65. I went over to, so that you go to the agenda. So this one is not using that same format. You go to the agenda for the meeting. These are going to be posted a couple days before the actual meeting. So the other benefit is you'll see when the meetings are, and then you'll go through here. So here's the monthly FOIA report, and it's going to vary what they include in these. Sometimes they're just going to include who requested, and other times they're going to actually have the entire request in here. Okay, so what we really like is to people start reporting on what they're seeing here. Some of these are, okay, map scores. Some of these are interesting. Okay, I'm going to tell you to look at this person. Dave Novak made 25 general requests in regards to bonds, liability, and financial policies. In particular, I want people to start looking up this kind of information. I'm going to show you where he's made this request in almost every other district I've looked at. 25 requests. That is excessive. This is in 1 month usually. So they're just showing that the fact that who requested it. So that's not quite as you don't get all the details on that one. But in this one is I don't see what district this one is. I think this is Evanston, actually. So I look, so this is whatever district this one is. I think it's Evanston. They have here, their FOIA requests are very limited. Hey, there's this Novak guy again. Interesting. Okay. They don't have the details on it. This is unusual. I think they normally have a little more details on this. So, okay, interesting. This one now is one of my districts, D15. I'm going to go over to the meetings. And you can go through and you're looking for the agendas, basically. If I go to this, I look at the agenda. This one now, I'm going to look for the FOIA requests, and they're somewhere in this section here. Let's see, FOIA. Okay, here, this one's at the bottom. Okay, look at this. This has been very busy. Jim told us about this group, Local Labs. This is basically an organization filing requests in some ways, basically automatically, looking to harass and try and catch school boards by basically collecting all the emails and just trying to find a way to harass them. School boards know that this is happening. The superintendents know this is happening. Local labs, local labs, local labs, local labs. So you can see, we want to start getting reports on all these requests that are being made. FOIA requests cost your district money. They cost you money to make these requests, for somebody to respond to them. In some cases, we've seen smaller school board districts actually be almost bankrupt from having to answer these excessive requests. But the other thing is they're looking to find ways to harass your school board, get them to resign. Look at some of these other things, ESSER funding. These are groups normally looking for ways to harass them. Oh, public office surety bond. This is something I would like for you to look for in your district or any neighboring districts. Take some random districts. If you're finding this request for photocopies of public official surety bonds, that is you're going to see this in almost every district. Oh, here's another one, same person, bonding liability insurance. This is happening, and in a lot of these, you're going to see that. This one, look at these pages and pages and pages of FOIA requests. And this is interesting because it actually has the FOIA request. So those I definitely take a look at. Another one more. I just want to catch. We'll catch one more here. D54. Again, we're looking at, if you do your search, go to your meetings, go to your regular board meetings, and then look for, and they're in different places. We're looking for Freedom Information Acts. This one had, retiring staff. Ted Novak, again, interesting. Ted Novak seems to be interested in a lot of different districts that have nothing to do with each other. So what I really would love for you to do is go into your school board, do a search on your school board, put in maybe your town, your district school board meetings, do a search on it, look for the agendas, and find where the agenda is, and then take a look for the FOIA request and open those up. See if you're finding anything on surety bonds. Ted Novak is of interest, but he's not the only one making these requests. This is where you're going to find out where people who are looking to cause trouble in your district, they may not even be members of your district, but they're going to be the people that are either going to run for office on a conservative slate or are going to try and get your superintendent to resign or your school board district to resign through these harassment. Again, surety bonds claims. This is happening. This person, is this really how you want your district money to be spent on these constant requests for surety bonds and masking and months of every email? So the assignments this time then are really looking for is if you could, first of all, join our Facebook page here. Join our Facebook page here. Again, these are in the chat. I'll also include this on our Facebook page as well. It's also in the chat. Join this book ban. So it's really, sign up. You're just going to report bans, get training, donate ban books. They also have some training for just when we see book bans. And book bans are not always, true book bans. It's also banning just content in your districts or your libraries. You can. Once you join this, you'll get some of these links, run for something. And actually, if you could look up your school board district, go to the agenda and look for the last couple of months. So maybe the last month didn't have much. See what's being in there, see who's requesting it. In your community, you want to know who the people are, the troublemakers, but you want to know who your allies are, and you want to know who your troublemakers are and know what they're requesting. If you're seeing these things, we need to be calling them out, letters to the editor, in school board meetings, and in your progressive or your moderate in your community. Make sure that they're getting called out, that these excessive requests are happening, and that when you're looking and you see those surety bond requests, those are requests that are targeting your school board members and your superintendents. And when people don't want to run, who is going to be there, right? Who's going to be left to run? So those are the things I wanted to share. I don't know if we had any questions. I see a question on FOIA requests. There are some, I do see, and you'll see that as well when you make a FOIA request, and you can make your own FOIA requests. I don't want to totally attack them, and be our own harassment, but people making FOIA requests, that is public information. And I don't know if they all knew that, because sometimes they see surprised that we know what's happening. We're trying to catch up here on this particular thing, but once they know we're watching them, I think that's a big benefit to us. I don't know if they charge because a lot of these are electronic. So not always, sometimes it'll be past a certain number of pages if you're asking for hard copy. But that's what also costs our districts money. So I think a lot of them are happy to get those hard copy pages because it's a harassment of administration, and it also costs money. Do we have any other questions in the chat that we didn't answer?
Mark early on had a question about whether we should protest Heartland Institute. We all know there's some, let me just run out of adjectives sometimes, bizarre things coming from Heartland Institute. But Joyce and Jim, what say you?
I personally think that's a great idea. Again, our message is honesty in education, save public education. And I think we need to be calling these groups out. I mean, they're in the suburbs of Chicago, they're everywhere.
Thank you, Joyce. And I also want to address something Lee has. I have an idea, but again, I'm not an expert in this area. Lee was asking, I think, about the excessive FOIAs that come from the other side. Edgar, that group, Joyce, that Heather talks about often. And we have had Heather McKeegan on this call. I don't believe she's here today. And we've also had Bonnie on. I can't recall her last name, but she's a reporter. And both of them, a lot of these folks here have faced personal attacks. I'm sorry to say, Joyce and Jim as well. And so I think what Lee is going after is if the other side sends these excessive FOIAs, I think, perhaps Heather and Bonnie have lived this life. What do we do? Because I have heard from Heather and Bonnie that they try to take us down and they try to, cut us off at the knees, our administrators, by sending so much FOIAs, we get stuck. I don't know if that's a question, Joyce and Jim, you can answer or not.
My opinion, and I'll let Jim answer as well, but my opinion is call them out, name names. I have done this in a board meeting. I have done this, and I started, and see if it makes a difference. Say who so-and-so is requesting 3 months of all the emails, literally 3 months of all emails between communications in some cases, between the school board administration and the Board of Education. They want everything. Call them out, say that's, and they may not even be in your district. So feel free to call that out because that's also normally in the agenda. Say, is this how you want your money spent? You can put those in letters to the editor, but shine a light.
Yeah, the other tactic that they're using besides FOIA requests is that thing that I refer to as paper terrorism. They are doing lawsuits, which the district has to respond to. We talked to somebody earlier this week who she was sued. It's costing her $700,000, or that's what she's being sued for, $700,000. And their goal is to settle. So they may sue the school district for arbitrary information, but the school district may decide it's going to cost us too much to prosecute this. So here's, $10, $20, $50,000 to go away. So that's another issue that we'll need to start paying attention to.
So so when you go to those FOIA requests, so please go through those and send an email or join our Facebook page and start posting them. I'd like to start tracking that by district. Those surety bonds, they're looking for a payout, like Jim just said. They're looking to intimidate, and it's paper terrorism, and they're looking to do recalls. So those surety bonds that are everywhere in our districts, let's search those out and start publicizing those.
And pardon me, then what I have seen quite a bit in the chat is that I think a lot of us acknowledge the fact that the bottom line is the defunding of the public schools. And there were comments about our friends, the Devos family, and how they're trying to turn attention over here so that they don't get taxed. And really, I believe one of the many reasons we started this conversation is because we're concerned about midterms, and we're concerned that CRT and all these other issues that aren't really the issues are going to be at the forefront. So not really a question, I think, for Joyce and Jim, but I think to acknowledge that we are being thrown some, diffusion here and there. And we need to keep our eye on the ball that this is to, bottom line, to defund the public schools. I don't know if you want to amplify that at all, Joyce and Jim.
Yeah, just remember Steve Bannon has stated that the road to win the midterm elections is through the school board. So he is pumping up the Trump, followers to actually really go into your school board and harass them. And
Wait, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Joyce.
No, and say Awake Illinois is becoming. They're one of the many groups here, saying that they've got chapters everywhere. They are pretty public about promoting privatization, not just privatization, but privatization in Christian schools. So it is that Christian white goal, really.
And besides that, what I saw, and I have been trying to track carefully, there were some administrative things. I know we have I think Bill is still here, there he is. We have at NWSOFA a YouTube channel, because this is number 8. Hats off to Joyce and Jim, another excellent presentation. And I do believe, Bill, that the folks on this call, if they want to start with day 1 and listen to all the presentations, you can find that on the NWSOFA YouTube. Am I correct, Bill?
Yes, that is correct. And there are other social issues that we profile, and those are up also. Definitely go up, find one you haven't seen, because every one of these is not just slightly different. It's an amazing. It's got to be 90% new information. And hats off to Joyce and Jim and the great work you do. And I'm sure you guys are looking for people to help you. So just let them know that you're there to help. I've noticed a couple of people have said we'd like to meet with you, which I think that is good. We need to tie together not only across the Chicagoland area, Illinois, and across the states. So hats off to Indivisible Illinois Social Justice Alliance and this particular meeting every month on disinformation, because it applies not only to school boards, the civic meetings of all kinds, but to everything that we do out there. Long answer to a short question.
Yeah, I saw a question in the chat from Mark about can we go after private schools?
That'll be our last question. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Actually, probably not. But what we can do is make it known that the private schools don't have to comply with the requirements that the Illinois State Board of Education requires for certain schools, certain classes. The other thing is, if this comes around, is vouchers, which the private schools will be, and they've already started that occasionally, and just have to make sure we're aware of that and fight against that, because the vouchers will come out of taxpayer money that's intended to fund the public schools. And that's how they intend to dismantle the public schools.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Bill, Kathy, everybody here for your excellent comments, excellent questions. This concludes our meeting. I want to remind you that the next Confronting School Board Disinformation meeting will be the 3rd Saturday of April. Sorry, don't have that date handy, but it is the 3rd Saturday of every month. So we will be back and we will keep on this, and together we will be successful.